Hello. Today I want to talk to you about how the revival of 1904-5 impacted Cardiff. People think that Cardiff was largely bypassed by the Welsh revival because it was such an English town. It was even felt at the time that the people here would lack the passion and fire found by the Welsh in the nearby coalfield, and that there were too many hard-shelled sinners in the town to allow the revival to spread. But what happened here defied expectation, even though Evan Roberts himself never came to Cardiff. Other revivalists did visit Cardiff, including Evan's friend Sidney Evans and R.B. Jones, who had sparked the revival in the north of Wales at exactly the same time that Evan Roberts was working in Locher. Several of the revival's famous soloists, mostly young women, also played an important role here in Cardiff. Some key revivalists lived here. Seth Joshua, who we've already encountered, lived in Talbot Street, and Principal Edwards of the Baptist College on Richmond Road were among them. There were over 1,000 converts in Cardiff by the beginning of February 1905, and several thousand were reported impacted by the end of the revival, a not insignificant number of people at all. One of the first chapels that was affected was Crewis Hall on Monthermer Road, where by the end of November 1904, there had been as many as 100 conversions. Some young people converted in the valleys came down to visit the chapels in the docks area and brought the revival fire there. In mid-December, in one meeting at Tabernacle in the centre of town, led by two young revival sinners, there were 50 conversions, some of them very dramatic. Entire families were converted or reunited in faith in the meetings, and there were tears of joy as the long-lost backsliders were restored. On one occasion at Tabernacle, Principal Edwards, the head of the Baptist College, was preaching from the parable of the master sending his servants into the highways to bring people in for the banquet that he had prepared. That's a revival message if ever there was one, isn't it? And the people of Tabernacle, they were very aware as they listened that just across the road from the chapel, where the St. David's 2 shopping mall stands today, were some of the poorest streets in Cardiff. They responded by taking the words literally to heart and went out from the meeting into the street to bring people into the meeting. This was at 11 o'clock at night. A little later, another news report said this: strangers were shortly afterwards seen to enter the building, among them a stalwart young American. He prayed and afterwards told the congregation with a sad face that as he was passing the chapel, quite a small boy had gone up to him and said something which pierced his heart. He could not resist the plea and so entered the building. He was a seafaring man, he said, and he had led the vilest of lives, but now he had brought home to him what he had never realized before. Later, when two young dissolute women who were considerably under the influence of drink were brought into the building by a young missioner, the congregation broke out into "Jesu, lover of my soul." Other scenes followed, and when the clock showed the hour of 12, an open-air meeting was held in front of the chapel, where a number of the new converts sang and prayed and appealed to others to join them. Wow, that's a good Friday night in Cardiff Centre, isn't it, eh? This street work became an ongoing feature of the revival at Tabernacle and also at the huge Wood Street Chapel too, which stood near where the old bus station used to be. Austin, the principal journalist of the revival, visited Tabernacle about this time and wrote of, quote, witnessing scenes which prove beyond question that the metropolis of Wales was as subject to the spirit of the revival as the mining towns and villages were. The town was being transformed by the revival. Incidents of drunkenness on the streets were down by 60% over the Christmas period. One off-licence had 200 orders for wines and spirits for the Christmas holiday cancelled. There were 22 fewer bars in the city in 1909 than there had been in 1903, even though the town was much bigger by then. Prayer and attending revival meetings had become the priority for many. Workplaces in Cardiff were also transformed. Men working on the night shift at the steelworks held early morning prayer meetings after they'd finished work and brought unsaved workmates with them, some of whom were converted. A regular Bible class for shop assistants, organised at David Morgan's department store on the Hayes, grew rapidly and up to 100 attended. The movement spread to other stores in the town, and a united Bible class for shop assistants was held on Friday evenings with 250 people attending. Soup kitchens to feed the homeless were set up, and on one night distributed 48 gallons of soup. Homes for fallen women were set up immediately after the revival, and in the next 2 years provided accommodation for 63 women. There was a 30% decrease in the number of prisoners in Cardiff prison. And people from many other countries came to Cardiff to visit the revival from all over the world and took the fire back home to their own nations. People from Cardiff too went on teams to England and Scotland and Ireland to spread the fire. And so Cardiff, as totally unexpected, became a really key centre of the revival in 1904-05, and it had an influence which in the end was worldwide. In Isaiah 64, verse 1, we read this: "Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down." And that was the prayer of many in Cardiff at that time, and that prayer was answered because the Holy Spirit was poured out powerfully on this town of Cardiff. And the same can happen today if that becomes our prayer as well.